Please give rise to bodhicitta, thinking I will establish all other sentient beings, limits and number at the level of perfect complete enlightenment, and to that end I will listen to this profound Dharma teaching and put it into practice. The Dharma that we're looking today is a torch lighting the way to freedom, complete instructions on the preliminary practices of the profound and secret heart essence of the Dakini. This is comprised of three main parts: the virtuous beginning, middle, and end. Having completed the virtuous beginning, we're looking at the virtuous middle, the main body of the text, which is comprised of two main parts. Part 1, how to follow a spiritual friend, the route of the path. Part 2, the main explanation of the stages for setting out on the path. We've covered the first, and we're looking at the second, which is comprised of two main sections. First of all, the general preliminary practices for each session, which make one a fit vessel, and section 2, the specific preliminary practice for the yogas of the two phases. We've covered the first. We're currently looking at the second, which is comprised of two subsections, namely the common preliminaries that cultivate the field of one's mind stream with the 4 practices for turning the mind, and 2, the uncommon special preliminaries that sow the seeds of the profound path in 5 stages. We've covered the first of these. We're looking at the second now. The uncommon special preliminaries in 5 stages. These 5 stages are taking refuge, the entrance to the path, arousing the mind set on supreme enlightenment, the root of the whole path, purifying unfavorable conditions on the path, the meditation of Vajrasattva, then gathering favorable conditions on the path by means of the mantra offering, and then training in Guru Yoga, the heart of the whole path. We have covered the first 3, and we're currently looking at the 4th, the mantra offering, gathering the accumulations, the conducive factors for the path by means of the mantra offering. And the explanation of this has 2 parts. First of all, general points to be understood, and the points of training in this case. So we've covered the first of these, and we're now looking at the second, clarification of the points of the training in this case. So we are on page 230. 231. So we have the liturgy for the verse of offering in the Ngondro liturgy, Amahong, the glorious infinite array of the billion-fold world of forbearance, and so on. Having offered this, you then dedicate the merit with, as a result of these positive actions, may all beings complete the accumulations, and so on. This verse. Exert yourself in this practice until you get a sign that you're completing the accumulations, either in experiences or in dreams. So, when practicing, whether it be a practice focused on the accumulation of merit or a practice focused on purification, then if our practice is on track, then we will experience these signs such as they might occur in dreams, like being washed and cleansed in dreams, or finding oneself reaching the summit of a mountain or hill, and so on and so on. So as it says here, for example, you're sitting on the lion throne wearing a crown, or that a lot of people, so wearing a crown, people or bodhisattvas place a crown on your head, or people are paying homage to you. So in dreams, such experiences might occur. These could be signs that you're completing the accumulations. So these signs in dreams can occur as signs of progress. That said, we shouldn't pay too much, we shouldn't invest too much in our dreams. In between sessions, be diligent in the many different methods for accumulating merit, performing prostrations, making offerings, and so on. So sessions means commonly we divide our practice into 4 sessions, 4 daily sessions, beginning at dawn until, I missed the exact hours from which she said, but so typically something like till dawn, from dawn till around 7, then from 8 till say 11 or noon, then from 1 or, so, or p.m. or so till 4, and then another session in the evening. So in between those sessions, in post-meditation, in our breaks, then we should be diligent in the various practices for accumulating merit. So sang, sur, Torma offering, so sung the cleansing smoke offering, sured the burnt offering, the water Torma offering, and of course prostrations and the like. Of course, the focus of our practice is given whichever given sadhana or preliminary practices we're performing. But in addition to the main practice, then we also need to practice these supportive practices, these what we call in-between session practices, which include, as I said, cleansing smoke offering, the giving of the body or severance. So ideally practicing all 4 feasts, making a gift of all 4 feasts every day. But failing that, at least one of the feasts. For instance, look at the example of Lord Atisha. There's no one more accomplished than Lord Atisha, but how did he spend his time in between sessions? He spent all of his free time making satsas. And the student said, "Oh, Master, you are the master. You're such a high lama. You shouldn't be, engaged in these lowly menial tasks of making satsas. We can do that for you." He said, "Really, you can do that for me? You can gather my merit for me?" And then he said, "Can you also eat my food for me and drink for me?" So Atisha was basically saying to his students, no, we need to accumulate our merit ourselves. And you read of practitioners who, like my late grandfather said, who I think Rinpoche was saying he did so many prostrations year after year that he developed great calluses on the palms of his hands. So we need to embrace these hardships. We need to endure hardships and embrace hardships. So it's Honoring Jigme in his Namtar, he says, if before you start your retreat, if you focus so much on, place so much importance on guaranteeing that you're going to have food to keep your stomach full for the whole duration of your retreat, that you're going to have people to support you and so on and so forth. He says before you've even started your practice, before you started your retreat, you've already fallen prey to obstacles. So we shouldn't be. So it seems that's how it is. This is what Jigme said. So if we think, as so many people do, okay, I'm going to go on retreat, but I'm going to do it once I have enough provisions, enough money, enough provisions, food, support, guaranteed support, and enough money in the bank to keep myself comfortable for the whole period of time. Once I've got everything sorted, then I'll start my retreat. Well, or if you think, once I've built a nice retreat cabin for myself, found something really comfortable to stay, then just as Jigme says, before you've started your retreat, you've even already fallen prey to obstacles. So I think Rinpoche is saying when Rinpoche did his own 3-year retreat, he stayed in just a very simple room, just 2 very small, simple rooms. nothing grand. It wasn't ideal, but that was what I had at the time, so I just made use of that opportunity. So I'm not saying this to praise myself, but rather just this is how we need to try and practice, right? Just take up whatever opportunity we have to practice and not delay in order to, just guarantee ourselves some material, some comfort, financial security, and so on. Moreover, these days you have a lot of people going into retreat and taking their smartphone with them or having a Wi-Fi connection, what have you, and ending up watching YouTube and so on while on retreat. This is not okay. Likewise, if you're in a teaching or any sort of Dharma assembly, you should not, have your phone in your hand. You shouldn't be looking at your phone. If you're sitting here, even though you're here, physically present in the gathering, sitting before me, but if you are playing with your phone, looking at something on your phone or getting distracted in any way, that distraction is preventing you from receiving the teaching, right? Receiving the transmission. So forget about receiving transmission online, even if you're here in person. If you get distracted, fall asleep, like some people nod off during the teachings and then end up letting out a fart in the middle of the teaching. So, they've they're just mindless, fall asleep and end up behaving like that. You can't receive teachings like that. So in all our time in between sessions, we should apply ourselves. Okay, so when coming to teachings, then we are actually practicing all 6 parameters. So making mandala offerings and preparing the place, making offerings and so on in request of the teachings. This is the parameter of generosity. Parameter of discipline is to sit in a dissonant manner, not move around, to out of respect wash your hands and feet and face before you come to the teaching, wear clean, be well dressed, to put up with any physical discomfort during the teaching, that's patience. To focus on the teaching one pointedly, like a deer enchanted by the sound of a flute. To listen one pointedly to the teaching, completely absorbed in the teaching and nothing else. That's the parameter of meditation. And then you might not be able to grasp every point of the teaching every day, but to grasp the main points, whatever it is, whether it be prostrations, offerings, how to chant a money mantra, even how to make offering of some grains, when tossing some grains up into the air, whatever it is, to gain some understanding. So from each teaching session, each day, to gain some understanding, some knowledge. It's difficult, sure, to get a handle on everything that's mentioned beginning to end, but you need to grasp something every day. And this is the parameter of wisdom. And then the parameter of diligence is to persevere, right? To persevere and apply our effort. So when we receive teachings, we need to learn from those teachings, right? Otherwise, if we're not learning anything, not understand anything, then no benefit is really going to come from us sitting here day after day. And those who do have knowledge, understanding, who do, like the Khenpos and Lopans and so on, for instance, they have a lot of knowledge, but if that knowledge isn't put into practice, isn't internalized, then that knowledge is not going to be useful, right? So the lay students here might not be so familiar with all of these points about how a teaching should be received and so on. The Khenpos and Lopans here, especially those with the title of Tugu or Lama, they will have this knowledge. They must and do have this knowledge. Sorry, they must have this knowledge. If they do not, then if even they don't know how a teaching should be received, or if they do know but they don't put that knowledge into practice, then what's going on? Then we're not really they're not really practitioners, right? They're not really fulfilling their role. It's just a guise, a superficial act then. So these points I just mentioned, they apply to whenever you're receiving Dharma teachings. There are so many great teachers, sublime beings here in Nepal and India, so many opportunities for all of you to receive teachings from different teachers. Whoever you receive teachings from, whatever teaching you receive, the way you receive it is just as I explained, that all the points I mentioned apply across the board. Likewise, there should be some fruition, some sign. Once we've received a teaching, there should be some sign of something in our conduct and the like that shows that we have received that teaching, right? That we've received teachings, we've learned something. So some result should come from our received teachings. Otherwise, if you receive teaching after teaching and you, nevertheless, every time you go to a new teaching event, you end up behaving in the same way, squabbling over cushions and seats and this and that, then it shows, that nothing has come from what you've already received. So as it says here, be diligent in the many different methods for accumulating merit, performing prostrations, making offerings, and so on. So outer, inner, and secret offerings. Offerings of body, of speech, and mind. So we can make imagined offerings of whatever we see that is pleasing, of anything that comes to mind, anything we see. So when you're walking here in the morning and you hear some fancy cars and houses, or anything impressive and excellent, you can immediately take that up in your mind and, without attachment, without clinging from your own side, then make a pure offering of it to the three jewels. These opportunities to make offerings and accumulate merit are always there, right there, in the palm of our hands. But as I said, the crucial point here is being free of attachment, as Kama Chame makes so clear in his Mountain Dharma. So if you can make an attachment, if you can make an offering of even a cup of tea, just a single cup of tea, and you do it without attachment, which means you would really be delighted if Buddha actually reached his hand down from the sky and took your cup of tea out of your hands so that you had no tea to drink yourself. You would feel nothing but delight and joy. That kind of detachment. Likewise, whenever we are chanting prayers or liturgies, we must do it mindfully, which means every word that we chant, we should be recalling its meaning at the same time. Every word in every prayer and liturgy we recite has a meaning, right? So if we can recite these prayers while recalling their meaning, then that recitation becomes really meaningful. So, offerings of incense, butter lamps, prostrations, kora, offerings you make on your shrine at home, the water offerings. All of these things and more. We should make use of these opportunities for gathering the accumulations, and do so as just explained. If we apply ourselves like this, making use of all of these different opportunities, big and small, on a daily basis, then just like drops of water accumulating to make the ocean, then we can really slowly, but we really can, without a doubt, come to gather vast stores of merit. Just like those drops of water, just like drops of water dripping from a mountain face onto stone below. And over the years, single drops of water wearing deep holes in solid rock. The same way, if we make use of each and every small opportunity to accumulate merit, seemingly small opportunity to accumulate merit, we can end up accumulating vast, significant merit. And again, we should make, if you do have wealth, material wealth, you should make sure that you make meaningful use of it by using at least a portion of it for making offerings and giving to those in need. Otherwise, well, material wealth itself is futile and transient, right? Like, look at the wildfires raging in California and Los Angeles. Such a wealthy area, so much wealthy property, infrastructure, of course, personal wealth there. But now these fires are raging through the area. They've taken so many lives, of course, and destroyed so much property, so much wealth, millions and millions of dollars, just like that, with the lick of a flame, gone in a flash. And they say this is wildfires are the fires exacerbated by climate change, but that it was they say it was started just by a small spark, as an electrical, a spark. I think that maybe the source was electrical, it seems, and this raging fire that has destroyed so much started from a single spark. So this goes to show just one spark, something tiny like a spark, can grow into wild raging fire. So likewise, by accumulating small deeds of merit, can grow into something really great and vast. When genuine realization of the profound actual condition of things occurs, the whole of the accumulation of merit and wisdom and the purification of obscurations is included. In the past, someone asked Padma Sangye, when is the time one should perform poa, the transference of consciousness? He said it's when the truth of Dhammata is seen, the intrinsic nature is seen. So he said, poa should be done when Dharmata, the intrinsic nature, is vividly seen and the bardo experiences are on the verge of arising. That's the time. But these days, where can you find a Lama who can actually see that? That said, if people with a practitioner with genuine bodhicitta, real love and concern, performs poa at the bedside of the deceased, and does so with a pure motivation, that can definitely be beneficial. But to really perform poa, then one needs high realization. One needs to attain realization. And to attain realization is not something easy. It doesn't just randomly come about. You need a lot of causes and conditions to come together. So there are figures like King Ngondro of the past who attained simultaneous realization, instant realization. But he and a few others like him are very rare beings, as rare as a blue moon. And even their instant realization of beings like King Ngondro, they did not come about without causes and condition. They must have accumulated extraordinary merit and the like in the past. So in short, the point is that to attain realization, one needs to perfect the accumulations of merit and wisdom. Without the backing of previous accumulation, genuine realization cannot happen. Those who have both the backing of previous accumulation and enduring past deeds are very few indeed, like King Ngondro. Even supposing that someone who has entered the gateway of the Dharma and acquired some faith has some habitual propensity for virtue in his or her stream of being, that propensity cannot be awakened just like that. So in the case of the personal liberation vows, the foundational vehicle, one must take one of the 7 personal liberation vows for the Bodhisattva vehicle, the Bodhisattva vow, the Vajrayana path, the respective samayas through empowerment. So it's possible. Supposing someone has entered the gateway of the Dharma in these ways in past lives and acquired some faith. Nevertheless, even if someone has such virtuous propensities, that propensity can't be awakened just like that, for it's difficult for a tiny spark to get a fire blazing without the right conditions. Even if someone has a lot of merit, has done quite a lot of purification in the past, when it comes to the great perfection, without without meeting a realized guru and receiving introduction to the nature of mind from them, then realization is not going to come about. Recognition is not going to come about. It's very unlikely to come about, as Ornament of the Mahayana Sutras explains. The primordial wisdom of the path of seeing comes about through the vast accumulations of merit, and inner and outer tutors. So a collection of specific factors lead to the primordial wisdom of the path of seeing dawning within one. So causes and conditions need to be brought together in order for realization to come about. Likewise, without if one has not accumulated a lot of merit, purified one's obscurations significantly, then one also won't be able to benefit others significantly by doing prayers on their behalf and so on. That won't be particularly beneficial if we haven't purified and accumulated from our own side. The path of the Vajrayana is just extraordinary. So when you have the view and meditation of the Vajrayana, then everything, the outer elements, the inner elements and so on, become objects or opportunities for the accumulation of merit and for the purification of obscurations. As it says, for this reason, there's an inconceivable number of different ways to accumulate merit. So we need not think we have nothing to offer or that the conditions are not right. For someone who has inner faith and wisdom, who has view and skillful means, then there is an inconceivable number of ways. But for someone who lacks those qualities, then there is they might find themselves just unable to accumulate merit, unable to purify. Simply offering the 7 branches of bodhicitta leads to an accumulation as vast as space. The 7 branches are homage, offering, confession, rejoicing, requesting the teachers to turn the wheel of Dharma, requesting them to remain, and dedicating the merit. And in the Vajrayana then, the Vajrayana rich with skillful means, then we have the various types of mantra, secret mantra, awareness mantra, vidyamara, and so on, which are skillful means to accumulate extraordinary stores of merit and wisdom, and to purify the obscurations. Likewise, the practices of, for instance, giving the body. These are extraordinary methods for gathering vast stores of merit and purifying vast amounts of obscurations. So whether it be the earth, water, wind, fire, if one takes up the skillful means of Vajrayana, all of these basic elements, every occurrence is an opportunity for accumulation and purification. So this is also one of the things that distinguishes the path of the sutra vehicle from the path of the sutras from the path of the mantras. So as when Tantra states, when distinguishing the sutra approach from the mantra approach, it says the mantra approach is rich in skillful means and involves little hardship. So the fact that the Vajrayana contains such a wealth of skillful means, this is something that marks it out from the sutra path. You can learn more about this. Those engaged in scriptural study can learn about this more from the, say, Guyagaba Tantra, Nelok Rangjung, and so on. These and other texts. So simply offering the 7 branches leads to an accumulation of merit and wisdom as vast in space. This one hand raised in salutation is said to bring 10 benefits, including a fine physique and a large entourage. So examples of this kind are very numerous and are clearly explained in the sutras and also in the ornament of the Mahayana sutras and so on. It's also explained, for instance, the karmic result of offering a bell up to a stupa, for instance, ripens in extraordinary qualities of speech and so on and so forth. The results of making such offerings is inconceivable and explained in detail. These various results are explained in detail in the scriptures. The accomplished masters in the past made the accumulation of merit their principal practice. So, to this end, some always engaged, always making prostrations, others were always making material offerings, others were always making water bowl offerings, and so on and so forth, or tsatsas and the like. So they really made the most of these skillful means, these opportunities for accumulating and purifying. There are many stories that show this. So, the accomplished masters in the past, they made the accumulation of merit their principal practice. So to this end, we need to embrace the physical and verbal hardships. So whether you've been staying on retreat, or doing whatever practice, prostrating, whatever practice you're doing, you need to embrace, really be willing to embrace and endure the physical and verbal hardships involved in that. For instance, if you're staying on retreat, and you build your own retreat cabin. Well, that involves a lot of physical hardship, right? Like Patricians in the past would build their own retreat cabins if they didn't have one or have somewhere to stay. This involves carrying rocks and wood and building a hut by hand. Real physical hardship, tough physical labor. And some of my grandfather Sadar Rinpoche's students did this, and Sadar Rinpoche would say, the merit that you accumulate from just carrying one of the stones that make up the wall of your hut has accumulated enormous merit. Embracing that physical hardship, right, for the sake of one's practice. So likewise, going out to collect water, chop wood, collect firewood, and all of the physical efforts you put into making your sang offering, your sur offering, and so on and so forth. These are all sources of merit. But nowadays we're basically not interested in the need to complete the accumulations. Even if we are slightly interested, we have little devotion and diligence. We don't have much confidence in the benefit of accumulating merit. We have a little devotion, a little diligence. Think about the hardships people endure just for business, profit, or say for economic migrants, They're risking their life time and time again, actually, traveling from country to country. Anyway, when you read about the things that economic migrants go through when traveling, say, from Asia or like a war-torn country to somewhere like the US, honestly, if you think about those hardships, you think wow, this person's gone through so much hardship, they must be on the verge of enlightenment. If we could apply that same kind of hardship, if we could embrace that same kind of hardship, put in that same amount of physical and verbal effort, then think where we'd get. So the story about someone who a story about someone who had paid a guide to take them somewhere across, take them across the border. I guess we could say they're an economic migrant. But, they paid this person to take them somewhere so they could do business and what have you. Anyway, this person deceived them and they ended up completely broke. And they were deceived, cheated, and cheated by the person they'd they'd trusted to take them to their destination. Then we have economic migrants, illegal economic migrants, say, traveling to USA, for instance. They risk so much, right? And people sell their land, everything they have, for the chance to get to America. And then the guides, the people they're paying to take them, steal their money, and they end up in the most desperate situation. Anyway, to this end, she told a few specific stories, but imagine if we were willing to endure the same hardships, take the same physical risks, the same physical austerities for the sake of enlightenment. Right? But we're not willing to do that at all, not one bit. That shows we lack faith, we lack faith in enlightenment, faith in the path. We lack devotion and diligence. And as a result, we don't manage to do any practice for accumulating merit. We leave the supports of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind to get covered in dust. So these days, a lot of people have very handsome shrine rooms with beautiful altars and excellent statues. People have invited statues and scriptures and so on to place on their altars. But then they don't clean the altars, they don't look after the altars are full of dust, dirt. The offerings are not presented nicely, neatly. And this is a source of a lot of negative karma, actually, to neglect these sacred supports. We recklessly stuff them under our own tattered hats and clothes and even walk over them. There's the story of one heretic non-Buddhist teacher who, after dying, he fell to hell, and his students, thinking he was a great master, kept paying homage to his remains, and every time they did so, a rain of lava would fall down onto him in hell. So this hell being sent a message to Moudgalyana. He said, "Please tell my students to stop doing this, they're actually harming me." When Moudgalyana passed a message on, the students were so outraged at the suggestion that their teacher was in hell, they beat Moudgalyana to a pulp. Anyway, one lesson of the story is that one should not put one's parents or ordinary relatives and people's bones, remains, into, say, a stupa, like a sacred object. That's not appropriate, that is not okay. If you make them objects of offering, then you can it can end up like that. Even the remains of a great master. Even if the remains, say the remains from a cremation of a great realized master, if they are kept, they should be prepared accordingly, so that they really are enduring sources of faith and pure perception. So these days, a lot of people, in recent years, people have started building stupas to house the remains of just ordinary practitioners, ordinary people. This is really not a good tradition. When Patrick Rinpoche passed away, he said to one of his students, he said, "Well, after I die, you'll plan to build a stupa, but do not do that. Such reliquary stupas or commemoration stupas should only be built for bodhisattvas and nobumis, noble beings. I'm not saying you shouldn't build stupas in memory of your, say, deceased parents, as a source of merit for them, to honor them. I'm saying you shouldn't put their bones, their ashes, inside inside such stupas. That is incorrect. But to build a stupa in memory of someone on their behalf, that is certainly okay. But any relics or remains that go inside should be genuine relics. Just putting all sorts of ordinary things inside a stupa will bring no benefit whatsoever. So up in Humla, there have been some of the elder practitioners who, when passed away, displayed great signs of accomplishment in their remains. From their remains came ringsel, sacred relic pills. But still, even in those instances, I advise their relatives and so on that it's really best not to put their remains in ashes inside stupas. I really don't think that's a positive thing to do. And I said, if you're insistent about doing that, then take just one or two of the ring cells, no bones or ash or anything, one or two of the ring cells, do some proper ablution and rinsing ritual, and then put those inside the stupa if you feel you really must. So you leave the supports of the Buddha's body, the statues, stupas and so on in the shrine to gather dust. All the while you take very good care of your own clothes, your own utensils and so on. You arrange water bowls up on the shrine, but you only refill them and clean them once a month. They just gather dust and get filthy. So it says here, though you have an altar and offering bowls, we leave them to grow dusty. It's more essential for us to clean and polish our own bodies. So such neglect of these sacred objects is really a source of negative karma. We've never offered a single flower to the three jewels with the thought of emptiness and an attitude of compassion. No, not once have we recited the 7 branches properly. How could we have any merit, though, when it's been taught that in order to acquire merit one has to perform the accumulations? What merit could there be in offering lies to the 3 jewels? So if you have wealth, you have wealth and grain and assets and money and this and that, and yet you do not offer any of that up to the 3 jewels, then how can you expect to accumulate merit? This is presuming one has wealth, right? If you have wealth and yet you don't offer any of it, then you're just lying to the 3 jewels. One day someone said to Kinram he said, "Oh, Kinram, you are so lucky. You have so much merit." This student was not at all intimidated by Kinram. The rest of us were usually very timid in his presence. He said, you have sponsors and students who provide for you and provide for themselves. Many other masters, they have to provide for their own students. I didn't catch all the details there, but this student, this man, said this to Khenpo Rinpoche. I think the gist of it is that Khenpo Rinpoche then said, well, if that's really the case, then you need to basically said, if that's really the case, if you're really so sort of open-handed, then you need to offer me this, valuable necklace you have around your neck. You need to make an offering of whatever you have. Otherwise, you're just all you're saying about being a sponsor who provides for the teacher and so on. It's just empty talk. Anyway, this person then just kind of laughed and wasn't willing to actually make an offering of their own necklace and the like. I am empty-handed, destitute of merit. I have nothing else to give, we declare, though we do not lack for gold, silver, fine silks, horses and cattle. So that was all what we just spoke of was in connection with that. So saying we keep the good food, we eat ourselves and offer inedible ingredients and so on. It's really important to be diligent in accumulating merit with whatever you can afford, so make every effort to do so. Okay, now we've completed the explanation of gathering the offerings, the manjal offering. Now we come to Guru Yoga. Guru Yoga is so important. It's really the heart of it all. So all of the other practices lead to this point. The practice of Guru Yoga. Guru Yoga is the indispensable preliminary practice for the great perfection. So just as the going for refuge was the entry way to the path and so on and so forth, Guru Yoga, it says here that it's the heart of the whole path, and in terms of the path of the great perfection, that Guru Yoga is the specific preliminary practice for the main part of great perfection, the main practice of the great perfection. At the same time, we could say Guru Yoga is actually the main practice for the great perfection itself. Kimadaziri, would you say signs of practitioners when dying? Said it's not the case. In short, it's not the case that everyone who sits in meditation or in tukdam when dying, or everyone whose death is accompanied by rainbows has died well, or that they are a great practitioner. It's not sure, actually, whether tukdam and rainbows are real signs of good practice. Khenpo Rinpoche would say a good practitioner, someone who dies, who is a good practitioner, and they die practicing. That's a good death. That's a good sign. And if on top of that they stay in tukdam or rainbows appear, then okay. So we have training in Guru Yoga, which, like I said, is the preliminary for the great perfection, path of great perfection. And the practice of Guru Yoga itself, it can lead to or invoke a recognition of the nature of might. A lot of people who experience that. Like in the past, when Ngondro Rinpoche was in India, there was an old lady who recited a lot of money mantras. She received mind instructions from Ngondro Rinpoche, Dushin Rinpoche was like Guru Rinpoche in the flesh, right? And he granted her request, gave her a lot of instructions again and again, pointing out the nature of the mind, but just no matter how many times he introduced her, she just couldn't get it. And he said, it's really not that difficult. But still she couldn't get it. And he said, okay, just let be, don't fabricate, don't contrive. What arises in your mind now? She said, Tara, the image of noble Tara. It's appearing vividly in my mind. So she wasn't. Her practice was not chanting the money mantra, but Tara, praying to Tara. So when someone has that habit of practice of praying to Tara, and then encounters a blessed teacher like Dushin Rinpoche, then their natural awareness, their rigpa, spontaneously arises in the form of Tara. So she recognized it like that. So as the words of my perfect teacher states, the most precious, greatest method for making primordial wisdom, the wisdom of realization dawn in your mind, this is Guru Yoga. To force that realization to arise. The method is Guru Yoga. Subjugating the Guru, training in the Guru, with the perception of the Guru as the Buddha, as an enlightened being. So with this pure perception of the vivid pure perception that sees the Guru as the Buddha in person, the Guru as Guru Rinpoche in person, then subjugating the Guru is inseparable with Guru Rinpoche, and reciting the Vajraguru mantra. But just reciting the Vajraguru mantra alone is not enough. You need to recite it with one-pointed concentration, with devotion, right? Then everything will come together. One can also practice Guru Yoga by chanting the name mantra of one's Guru. This is actually a really blessed way to practice. So Rinpoche just chanted how the mantra would be. For instance, we were taking Dungsa Noble Rinpoche as the Guru. Or Gyana Benza would be Kyabji Dushin Rinpoche. Om A, the Guru's name, the teacher's name. And chant. So in the Nyingtik Yapshi teachings, Longchenpa explains like this. This is one can train in Guru Yoga like this, taking the name mantra of one's own Guru as the mantra. Chant this mantra constantly in your sessions while making circumambulations, walking around. Constantly recite this mantra in supplication and prayer. The blessings will enter you, the blessings will flood you, and realization will come about. So in short, the root, the source, the root, or the root cause of the blessings entering us is the practice of Guru Yoga. So, generally it's taught that the best way to practice Guru Yoga is to visualize Guru Rinpoche in front of you, to take the form of Guru Rinpoche, and understand that Guru Rinpoche is inseparable from your root Guru. In essence, this is your root Guru taking the form of Guru Rinpoche. Because when we make use of visualization, right, visualize our personal teacher in the form of Guru Rinpoche, this enlightened form of Guru Rinpoche, it helps us cultivate pure perception, right? And we have a lot of impure perception, seeing our teacher as ordinary, as having faults and shortcomings. So Guru Rinpoche, though, we don't perceive Guru Rinpoche as an ordinary person, though, right? He's a Buddha. So that is a skillful means. So we visualize Guru Rinpoche, understand that Guru Rinpoche is a Buddha. Guru Rinpoche is not an ordinary Buddha. And you understand that Guru Rinpoche is inseparable from my teacher. you train in this way, you will reach the point where when you see Guru Rinpoche, what you see is your root teacher. That you reach the point where you really do not perceive any difference between your teacher and Guru Rinpoche. We don't do this for the sake of our teacher, but for our own sake, right? So these days, so many people, it's so common for people just to misinterpret, misunderstand everything that's said, take it the wrong way. So when we say visualize the Guru as Guru Rinpoche, it's not so that our personal teacher can gain respect and gain and so on. It's so that we can develop pure perception and have that and become a receptacle for the blessings, right? It's also said that visualizing the Guru as in the form of Guru Rinpoche helps prevent obstacles from arising, and seeing Guru Rinpoche is inseparable from one's root Guru. In essence, this is one's root Guru that opens the stream of blessings, we could say, that encourages the stream of blessings to flow and to enter us. So in essence, our personal root Guru, in appearance, Guru Rinpoche. So this visualizing and practicing in this way will bring us closer to the accomplishment of Siddhi. Whatever other practice we're doing, say visualizing Magic Labdran or what have you, the deity, the Guru, is always inseparable from our personal root Guru. In essence, one's root Guru, in appearance, Magic Labdran, Guru Rinpoche, or whoever. So here, when practicing Guru Yoga, the mantra we recite is the Vajraguru mantra. Oma Hong is body, speech and mind, Vajraguru is Guru Rinpoche's name. Sorry. And then Siddhi Hong is bestow the cities. So there's many different ways that the Vajraguru mantra can be explained. But in short, it's the name mantra of Guru Rinpoche. Calling on Guru Rinpoche by name, and with Siddhi Hong you say, bestow me the cities, you're invoking the cities. And the word Guru itself in Tibetan Lama has the sense of heavy, heavy with qualities, and it also means unsurpassable. The Guru is heavy with qualities and is peerless, matchless, unequaled. There are two sections here, general points to be understood and the points of training in this case. The first of these is divided into three. The reason one needs to be diligently convinced that this is the essence of the path, that there is nothing greater than this. This is it. When it comes to the great perfection, it's said it's difficult to realize for two reasons. One is because it's too easy. When the teacher says it's like this and that, we just can't believe it. It just sounds too simple. And the other reason it's difficult to realize is because it's actually very tough. Because it's difficult, we cannot understand it. So if you approach it by means of scripture, reasoning and so on, then it's very difficult to actually comprehend. And when introduced to it, then it sounds so simple we just can't believe it. So, like when Dujun Rinpoche and this old woman came together, the woman who practiced Tara. So, and she said, "Oh, I see Tara," and he pointed out, "Okay, that is your, the nature of your mind." Very easily, very simply, in a very simple way, she recognized the nature of mind like that. And when she passed away, rainbows appeared and great signs occurred. So this was a woman who lived in Kalimpong, who met Dujun Rinpoche when he was in Kalimpong. So I heard this story, this account from maybe my late father or my uncle. Probably not my father, he didn't tell so many stories. So if we practice Guru Yoga, then we can reach the point where one day the Guru just gives us a sign, makes a gesture, and in a very simple, easy way, we come to just realize the nature, to recognize the nature of our mind. That can happen. Some of our students, all the women who are doing practice, they come and say, please give me pointing out instructions. Give me pointing out instructions. And I say, you don't need a pointing out instruction. Keep on practicing the Vajraguru mantra as you are and merge your mind with the Guru's mind. Just keep on practicing like that. And at some point you'll automatically come to recognize the nature of mind in your own practice. So it said, like Khyentse Rinpoche said, when you start feeling when you start feeling convinced that your guru, your personal teacher, must be the Buddha, must be Guru Rinpoche, essentially, you kind of start to suspect this or feel you start to develop confidence in this fact. Not confidence, you think, the first step is you don't yet have confidence in this, but you start to think that it's likely, it seems that they probably really are the Guru. When that thought and perception arises, that shows you're starting to recognize the nature of mind, like you're approaching it, you're coming close. When you then feel completely confident that I don't perceive it myself, but they really are the Guru, they must be. You feel that confidence, not just you feel confidence, and that shows that you've recognized. And when you feel complete conviction and you really see them as the Buddha in person, as Guru Rinpoche in person, then that's a guarantee that you've recognized the nature of mind. So I didn't translate that very clearly, but as in short, we could say that whether you've recognized the nature of mind or not, this is reflected in your perception of your teacher. When we say pure perception, the perception that your teacher really is the Buddha, we can say, we can parrot the words, oh, I see my Buddha as person, they are the Buddha in person, but when it really comes down to it, there's very few people who have that pure perception. Like when Chögyam Rinpoche was asked by someone to give them Dzogchen teachings, and they said, no, I can't give you those teachings. You need to have the faith that sees me as Buddha in person. They said, oh, I do, Rinpoche, I really do. And he said, really? Well, then if I pull down my pants and shit in front of you, will you eat that steaming shit? And, if you really see me as Buddha, you will willingly do that. I'll be able to do that. Of course, the man couldn't do that, right? It shows that in spite of what he said, he did not have the perception, the pure perception, the real conviction that Chögyam Rinpoche was Buddha in person. The reason one needs to be diligent, convinced that this is the essence of the path, so this is the first of these 3 subsections, all the perfection and good qualities and so on. Of Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, all the way down to ordinary beings, they come from reliance on their predecessors, from relying on a spiritual friend. So from faith and pure perception in one's spiritual friend, that is the source of qualities. Like when a student said to the great Kadampa master Dromtonpa, he said, Master, please give me some blessings. He said, Son, give me some devotion. So this means that to receive the blessings, we need devotion. When you have devotion, some degree of devotion and some degree of the blessings will enter you, and otherwise not. Just like this student saying, Master, please give me some blessings. The master replying, my son, please give me some devotion. So the strength of the blessings you receive relates to the strength of your devotion. I think of the great Pandita Naropa. He was one of the greatest Panditas or scholars, one of the 4 gatekeeper scholars at the renowned institute Nalanda, Vikramashila. Anyway, he was so accomplished already, but still hadn't realized. And when he went out to meet his guru Talopa, he had to undergo enormous hardships, many trials and tribulations. Finally, after going through all of these hardships, finally Talopa sent, according to one account, sent him off to collect some water. And when he came back, slapped him across the face. He passed out. And when he woke up, his guru's wisdom had transferred completely to him. Likewise with Longchenpa. From a young age, at a young age, he became a very accomplished and celebrated scholar. He was the celebrated scholar of Sami, but still he hadn't recognized. So he went out in search of his Guru Kumaradza. He went off to practice. He went off to practice, and then one morning he had a vision of Tara. Tara came to him riding a turquoise horse, and praying to her with tears in his eyes, surrendering to her. She said, "You must go and meet your destined Guru Kumaradza. You can find him in this direction." And so he set off, and it was only training at the feet of Guru Kumaradza that Longchenpa, this great accomplished scholar and practitioner, came to directly realize the true nature. In particular, in the profound secret mantra vehicle, the accomplishments all come from following a teacher and from receiving empowerment from that teacher. Empowerment is the entryway to the Vajrayana, right? So just like on the Bodhisattva level, the entryway to the Bodhisattva path is taking the Bodhisattva vow. Likewise in the Vajrayana path, the entranceway is receiving empowerment. There's no way to follow the Vajrayana path without first receiving empowerment. Said if you listen to or read the Vajrayana teachings, or even put them into practice, but without having received empowerment, you might be able to, even if you attain some mundane siddhis, like miraculous powers from that practice, because you have done so because you haven't received empowerment, then you will, in the long term, you will go to hell. You will fall to hell. So this means receiving empowerment at the outset is the indispensable entranceway to Vajrayana. And even once one's received empowerment, one can't get to know the ordinary and extraordinary pith instructions, the pith instructions that reveal the nature of mind without their being revealed by the teacher. So this means that first one must receive empowerment, enter the path, gain some understanding, engage in establish a foundation of understanding and practice, and then if on that basis one receives the pointing out instructions, then one has a hope of recognizing. So if you receive instructions from a teacher and you change, you end up more compassionate than you were before, more devoted, with more pure perception, and so on and so forth. Well, these are signs that the blessings have entered you to some extent. These are signs that something has taken place. So, more particular is the view of the co-emergent absolute truth. So, The natural state is already present within us. It's co-emergent or naturally present. And what we need to do is to actually recognize that basic nature right through the condition of encountering the teacher, receiving instructions, and so on. So in the past, this light. In the past, I received teachings on the Guyugaba Tantra and Longchenpa's Chochu Minso commentary from Kimmo Petse. He was an extraordinary teacher, giving us an extraordinary teaching. Sorry, Rimbi Rinpoche said Kimbo does it Rinpoche. In any case, Rinpoche was, Rinpoche is saying I was receiving teachings in the Guyugaba Tantra. We were like halfway through the teachings. So I think it's Kimbo does it Rinpoche, teaching Chochu Minso. We were halfway through the teachings, but I still hadn't gained any kind of recognition or had any real internal experience. And I was really trying everything I could. And then we reached halfway through the text. I thought, well, I just need to go and tell Ken Rinpoche. So I, told him very honestly that I was just not really getting it, like not having any. It wasn't sinking in, and he said, in short, he said, "Don't worry, you don't need to stress out. Just keep going, and if you just keep on going, if you keep on practicing and supplicating, then through the force, eventually, through this, as a result of your supplication, your devotion, your practice, there will come a point in time when something, it could just be a very seemingly mundane trigger, some event, some emotion, something you see will trigger recognition, and then everything will fall into place." So when we talk about recognizing the nature of mind, it doesn't have to happen with some grand gesture or profound instruction given by the guru in a formal setting or anything like that. It can be just something, just something very simple happening in your common ordinary life that can trigger recognition, that can trigger realization. Even when So, any accomplishment, however great or small, will only be attained by pleasing the teacher and receiving his blessings. You please the teacher by practicing, by devoting yourself to practice, by developing yourself through practice, and that is how you receive their blessings. Here, when we talk about teacher, we're talking about a specific type of teacher. There are so many different types of teacher, right? We need to be clear about this, especially those from overseas, newer students. We need to be really clear about this. There are 20, 30 or more types of teacher enumerated in the scriptures. Teachers who give you vows, teachers who give you certain levels of teachings, teachers who give you only transmissions or only instructions on a certain thing, teachers who teach you at a certain level. When we say teacher here, when we say guru here, we're talking about the guru who has given you empowerment, has given you tantric transmission, and has given you pith instruction from all three. And most specifically, the teacher who gives you pith instruction, and even more specifically, a teacher who gives you pith instruction that directly introduces you to the nature of mind so that you recognize it. And they are the teacher with the greatest significance for you. That is the teacher you have the kind of weightiest connection with. So when it says in the scriptures, like here and elsewhere, that if you displease your teacher or transgress their command, you will go to hell and so on, they're talking about the teacher with whom you have the weightiest, most profound connection, namely a teacher from whom you've received tantric empowerment, transmission, and pith instruction. Not just any teacher, not just a teacher you've received, say, some like foundational vehicle vows from, or one simple teaching from, or the like. So it's important to understand this distinction and to understand what we're talking about in any given context when we say teacher, right? Because there are different types of teacher. So it's taught that one should not regard the teacher in the way that a hunter regards a musk deer. So these are perverse, said to be perverse perceptions that should be abandoned. Seeing oneself, the student, as a hunter, the teacher like a musk deer being hunted. The teaching is like the musk, and hunting down that teaching as being like being your action. Basically, you just pursue the teacher like a musk deer. You don't value the teacher for themselves. You just are just concerned with what you can get from them. You want to get some teaching from them, just like a hunter wanting to get musk so they can set up a profit and benefit themselves. So that is how we should not regard a teacher. We're at the top of page 236 at the moment. A lot of stories we could tell here about teachers and students. There was a student once who, up in the border regions, so in Cameroon, a lot of people here are from Cameroon, so they will actually have known this person or heard a lot about him. This person was a Lama practitioner. They spent a long time doing practice and developed some accomplishments, some power. He was really devoted, really diligent. Stayed for a long time in the retreat. And at one point he met Seda Rinpoche. When this Lama asked Seda Rinpoche, "Who's your teacher?" he said, "My teacher is Degyo Rinpoche, the first Degyo Rinpoche." And he said, "Well, who's your teacher?" He said, "Oh, my teacher's the Karmapa." Of course, the Karmapa was an extraordinary master, but this Lama must have been obscured by his own negative karma, in spite of having such a precious teacher as Karmapa. Seda Rinpoche said, "Your view seems a little off. Your view seems a little off. I think it would help you to meet Degyo Rinpoche and receive some teachings from him." But this Lama felt he'd received everything he needed, and so he didn't go off to meet Degyo Rinpoche. He just stayed on retreat for many years, and he developed some powers of samadhi, it seems. So then he had a Z, a very valuable stone. Anyway, some people found out that he had this Z stone, which is so incredibly valuable. Some people came, some hunters, what have you, came up to him and basically demanded the Z stone. Demanded they give it to him, and he refused to give it. So they started attacking him, assaulting him. He put his zen, his shawl, over his head and started visualizing his yidam. And through the strength of his visualization, no matter how much they punched him or beat him, they couldn't harm him at all. Through the strength of strength of his samadhi. But then he thought, well, more supreme than my Yidam deity is my guru, the Guru Kamapa. So then he took his zen off his head and said aloud, Kamapa, think of me. And then these thieves, they smacked him in the head and he died. And this triggered a wrong view in him, in the Lama, wrong view towards the Guru, and through the strength of that wrong view, he then took rebirth as a spirit that ended up causing so much harm to the local people. So all the people up in this area are very familiar with the story of this man, and also his ghost. So this is, just to say, a tale of caution. The consequences that can come from having a wrong view. It wasn't that the Karmapa lacked blessings or something. Not that at all. But from the Lama's own side, because of his wrong view and negative karma, he ended up taking rebirth in his spirit. As a spirit, there are stories of other students ending up in the same fix. There's a story of Rudra, the great demon. Great demon Rudra came about from a student who fell onto the wrong path, misinterpreted the tantric teachings. Anyway, you can find an account of that story in the Chronicles of Guru Rinpoche. Still more particular is the view of the co-emergent absolute truth, the way things truly are, which is the inconceivable absolute nature beyond all description or illustration. The absolute nature is inconceivable, surpasses thought, it's ineffable, indescribable. Self-arisen wisdom, natural primordial wisdom is like that. So, above it said, but if you fail to do so, there'll be negative consequences. If you fail to please the teacher and so on, there'll be negative consequences as described in the Tantras, the oral tradition, and the stories of the past. So, all the stories and that I just mentioned relate to that, are instances of illustrations of those consequences. So the absolute nature is inconceivable, beyond description and illustration. This can only be introduced by means of the teacher's paid instructions or transmitted through the blessings of the authentic lineage. So the wisdom, the natural state of all beings, the nature of mind of all beings is the same. There is no qualitative difference between the wisdom. Between one person or the wisdom of a master and the wisdom of a student or an ordinary being. The difference is whether one has manifested or actualized that intrinsic wisdom or not. Whether one has applied oneself with diligence to training in that and actualizing that. So look at like the example of Jujuningpa. He had this unwavering, deep-rooted faith, overwhelming faith in Country Shizogyal and Guru Rinpoche. Through that faith, he realized his intrinsic wisdom. And Gyalgyal Rinpoche, who practiced so diligently, did the fasting practice, Avalokitesha fasting practice. For years and years, he became so thin and emaciated that when he held his hand up to the sun, you could see right through it, through his palm. And he did so much practice, year after year. And eventually he went off to see Dejung Lingpa. So to tell this story in short, the story about the first Gyalgyal Rinpoche. So he'd already done so much practice, so much accumulation and purification. One of his uncles was going off to see Dejung Lingpa, who was quite well known by this time. So he when he heard his name, he thought, "Oh, I also must go." He was somehow captivated just by the name of Duzhu Rinpa, so he accompanied his uncle and went to see Duzhu Rinpa. They traveled quite a distance to Duzhu Rinpa's encampment. Duzhu Rinpa, this time, he would sit in meditation, and he would travel to Guru Rinpoche's Pure Land, the glorious copper-colored mountain, and he would stay in meditation for 7 days, night and day, his body unmoving, while his mind was in the glorious copper-colored Pure Land with Guru Rinpoche and so on. So this is how Duzhu Rinpa was. This is what happened week after week with the Duzhu Rinpa. This was seen by everyone, all the students and people around. So when Daegyur Rinpoche and his uncle arrived at Duzhu Rinpa's encampment, they requested an audience with the treasurer of Ila, Duzhu Rinpa, and they were told, well, he began his meditation session this morning, and now he's up in Glorious Colored Mountains, so you cannot see him for 7 days or so. So just stay put. Don't worry, stay put. When he returns from the Glorious Colored Mountain and rises from his samadhi, then you can meet him. And Daegyur Rinpoche was so distressed. He was so desperate to meet Duzhu Rinpa, and he thought, I've arrived here, I'm right in his presence, and yet still not able to meet him. I must have such terrible karma, so much obscuration, and so little merit. And he wept at his misfortune, and so he spent the following days doing circumambulations around Duzhu Rinpa's tent, around his encampment, and making prayers. And 7 days, Duzhu Rinpa returned from the glorious colored mountain. He re-entered his body, so to speak, and rose from his samadhi. And then one of the first things he said was to his attendant was, "Has a monk arrived? Has a monk arrived to see me?" They said yes. They said, "Bring him here immediately." And so Daegyur Rinpoche was called in to see him. As he entered the tent, the attendant had just poured some tea into Duzhu Rinpa's cup, and the steam was rising up from the cup in front of Duzhu Rinpa, and at the same time some rays of morning sun were shining in through the tent. And with this, the entire Trodikali mandala appeared in the steam and light rays in the tent. So we had this direct vision of the mandala right there and then. Daegyur Rinpoche had prepared so many questions for Daegyur Rinpoche. He wished to offer up his realization and have it affirmed or what have you. He'd done a lot of preparation, what he was going to say, what he was going to ask. And then Duzhu Rinpa, knowing this, grabbed him by the scruff of his neck. Duzhu Rinpa had a sword. He had always carried a sword, and he took the sword out and slapped it on his thigh 3 times and said, while holding Daegyur Rinpoche by the neck, by the collar, he said, "Well, you have something to ask me, don't you? If you have something to ask me, ask it, really wrathfully," while slapping his sword on his thigh. Daegyur Rinpoche was so intimidated, all his mind went completely empty. Any attachment he had to his experience and realization just dissolved right there, and then his mind went completely empty, and a transmission of realization occurred right there and then. So, anyway, I mentioned that story briefly because a lot of us here have a connection to Daegyur Rinpoche in that tradition, so it's good to know his story. So in this way, this can be introduced, the Absolute State can be introduced by means of the teacher's pith instructions or transmitted through the blessings of the authentic lineage, as we see with Daegyur Rinpoche, or with Duzhu Rinpa, who saw Guru Rinpoche and Khandreye Gyal's face to face and so on. It's also possible to gain conviction in the natural state through a more analytical path, for instance, using the reasonings found in the Madhyamaka teachings, and arriving at certainty in the nature of the absolute state at a conceptual level, and then training in that certainty, deepening that certainty through practice, and arriving at a degree of realization through that. And there are also other skillful means, like the practices of using one's own body and others' body, these Vajrayana practices. Guya Samaja, Yamantika, and so on. Practices of the third empowerment. The third empowerment, the wisdom knowledge empowerment. So the practice of the third empowerment is a bridge, a step to the fourth empowerment. The third empowerment itself is not the ultimate fourth empowerment. But as Rinpoche Rinpoche would say, by means of the third empowerment and the practices of one's own body, others' body, illusory body, the yogic practice and so on, these practices relating to the third empowerment, these practices can invoke co-emergent wisdom that leads one to the absolute state, to the level of the fourth empowerment. So those practices are means that lead one to the final destination, so to speak. And then there are other the approach of the Great Perfection is a direct approach that introduces you from the very outset to the absolute consummate state. So there are these different approaches and ways to go about it. And there's also the transference of blessings, like we see with Naropa and Lopa, Mapa and Mila. Kyoko Rinpoche was a disciple of Tsangpa Drupchen. It's different interesting ways that different masters have gained realization. So you can read about this and learn more about these things. It cannot be pointed to in any other way. You don't see it. You don't come to see it by having it pointed out. You don't come to understand it by having it described. Longchenpa would say that, to translate loosely. So the natural state beyond constructs is like that, beyond description, illustration, and so on. So the ineffable, innate state of natural awareness, it goes without saying that that state is beyond description, demonstration, and so on. As it says in Nogoyoga Tantra, the state of perfect enlightenment or the perfect Buddhas, you will not find anywhere. No matter where you look for it, you will not find it. You will not find it elsewhere, outside. Rather, when introduced to you, as it says here, revealed by the teacher with timely skill, it will become known as a result of one's own merit and purification. So vast accumulation, vast purification. This is why you need to recite the Vajra Guru Mantra while training Guru Yoga, praying to the Guru, supplicating the Guru, and accumulating hundreds of thousands of the Vajra Guru Mantra. 10,000, 20,000, many tens of hundreds of thousands of the Vajra Guru Mantra, and then eventually we'll reach the point where, just like a flame, just like a match being ignited and lighting a fire, realization will take birth, realization will dawn. And for this to happen, this recognition, realization to happen, you need a realized guru. When I say realized guru, I mean a realized guru like Kyabje Dujun Rinpoche, Kyabje Dilgu Khyentse Rinpoche, Dujun Rinpoche, Pindu Rinpoche. These great masters. Seems like there aren't so many around these days, but that's there must be some. No doubt there are some. But in this degenerate age, it will be difficult. It's difficult to find such beings, even if they are around. Some of them are around. So But if we apply ourselves to the accumulation of merit and the purification of obscuration by all and every means, and cultivate faith, pure perception, and we constantly supplicate the Guru, and supplicate the Guru that we can gain realization, then sooner or later something will happen, something will happen to trigger recognition. When the teacher's words enter your heart, it's like seeing you have a treasure in the palm of your hand. The 25 qualities of the fruition. So in the Sutra teachings, the qualities of enlightenment are described as the major and minor marks and so on. In the Vajrayana teachings, we talk more about the 25 qualities of the fruition. So when the teacher's words enter your heart, it's like seeing you have a treasure in the palm of your hand, the Buddha in the palm of your hand. The state of enlightenment endowed with all of these qualities is right there. We'll stop here for the break, and now we dedicate the merit.